afternoon. Good afternoon. On behalf of the Planning Committee, we welcome you to Cleveland, Ohio. Any city that has a main thoroughfare named Euclid has to be a great place to have a math conference. Euclid Avenue is parallel to our beautiful lakefront, where you will see other points of interest, such as the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, the Science Museum, the Flats, and if you continue on Euclid, you will find our beautiful Playhouse District and the world-renowned Cleveland Clinic. We hope you don't visit the Cleveland Clinic. So welcome to our beautiful city. Before I introduce our speakers, a few announcements. There will be a reception following the panel with a cash bar. And after each of our speakers, there will be a short Q&A. And now to our panel session. In keeping with our theme, envisioning the future of mathematics education in uncertain times, this evening we will hear from panelists throughout North America speaking on AI technology and its role in mathematics education. Our first speaker is Candace Walkington from Southern Methodist University, who will provide a review of the current literature on generative AI in mathematics education. Dr. Walkington is in the Annette and Harold Simmons Centennial Chair, professor in the Department of Teaching and Learning at Southern Methodist University, specializing in mathematics education. She was an IES postdoctoral fellow in mathematical thinking, learning, and instruction at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Dr. Walkington was the recipient of a Spencer Postdoctoral Research Fellowship grant, and in 2019, she received the Presidential Early Career Award for Scientists and Engineers from the U.S. Department of Education. While at SMU, she has received a very impressive $12 million worth of grants as PI or co-PI from the National Science Foundation, from the U.S. Department of Education and the U.S. Department of Defense. Dr. Walkington serves as an executive editor of Cognition and Instruction. Our second speaker is Professor Teresa Rojano. Since 1975, she has been based at the Center of Research and Advanced Studies of National Polytechnic Institute in Mexico, where she was appointed Professor of Mathematics Education in 1985 and Emeritus in 2012. Professor Rojano has conducted research in algebraic thought with a special focus on the transition from arithmetic to algebra, carried out collaborative research with the Bristol University and the University of London on school algebra and mathematical modeling within technological environments. She was funded by Spencer Foundation, the British Council, and the National Council of Science and Technology. In her latest projects, web environments with artificial intelligence and adaptive systems have been developed to explore feedback models in parameterized modeling activities, as well as to foster the development of the sense of structure in algebra. And our third speaker is Dr. Philippe Richard. He is a full professor at the University of Montreal within the Faculty of Education. Specifically, specifically in the Department of Didactics. His research focuses on mathematics education, specializing in areas such as artificial intelligence applications in education, mathematical reasoning, and the development of problem-solving strategies. Dr. Richard's work has contributed significantly to understanding how technology can aid in teaching mathematics, particularly through interactive geometry software and intelligent tutoring systems. In addition to his research, Dr. Richard is engaged in designing educational tools that assist with geometric reasoning and automated reasoning, a field where he has published extensively. We are so honored to have such three esteemed colleagues among us. So welcome Candace first. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Candace Walkington from Southern Methodist University, and I'm going to be talking about the implications of generative AI in mathematics education. Okay, so to start out, what is generative AI? So one of the most well-known applications in math education is having it solve math problems. So I gave it this problem that went viral on social media a year or two ago, and asked it to explain to me how to solve this problem. I used GPT-4, which is produced by OpenAI. And you can see it gave me a pretty detailed explanation of how to solve the problem. It gave me the correct answer, and it also was able to tell me why this might be a difficult problem, why this problem might have gone viral on social media. Now, if you look at output like this, you might get the impression that GPT is quite good at math. But a lot of the media coverage has talked about how large language models are bad at math. So where is the disconnect here? If we look at how contemporary AI performs on math assessments, the technology is actually quite good. It scores 89th percentile on the math SAT, 4 out of 5 on the AP Calculus exam, and 80th percentile on the quantitative GRE. So while generative AI is not a calculator, it's not a computer algebra system, it's not perfect, saying it's bad at math isn't entirely accurate anymore. Okay, so we kind of saw this one already, but I also asked an image generating AI to guess for me how y'all would look today. I wanted it to generate a picture of my audience at PME-NA. So what do you think it thought y'all would look like? Let's find out. So first, let me say, y'all are really underdressed compared to this picture. I mean, you're also like sitting weirdly far apart. But more importantly, notice the striking lack of diversity in this picture. This is what it thinks our conference looks like. This is what it thinks our community looks like. And then notice who's in a position of power at this conference. This was the very first generation. I didn't even have to try to get it to generate this. We've got 5 white men in suits sitting at the front running things at this conference. So generative AI can not only generate text and generate images, it can also interpret images. This is something we've been looking at in one of our projects on students going on math walks in their community. So when they go on math walks, they take pictures around community spaces and they ask mathematical questions about those pictures. We've been experimenting with having generative AI be a thought partner for them in generating questions from pictures, especially at the beginning when they're just learning the process. So I gave ChatGPT this photo from the Martin Luther King Jr. Community Center, one of the sites we work with in Dallas, of this MLK mural, and asked it to come up with mathematical questions we could pose based on it. And as we found is typical, it actually did a good job of looking at the image and thinking about mathematical principles. It wants us to talk about patterns in the arrangement of the bricks, as well as what kinds of symmetry we could observe in the design. So our theme this year for the conference is envisioning the future of mathematics education in uncertain times. And the staggering capabilities of these AI systems has created uncertain times for our community. So to give a definition, generative AI is a class of AI that is capable of generating new data and outputs by learning patterns from training data. The rise of generative AI is happening in a context where we've seen significant changes in North America and the world, resulting from the pandemic, from war, from technological, political, and social shifts. And these shifts are also occurring within academia, reflected in theoretical and methodological change, and certainly methodological change is coming with the rise of Gen AI. And we have a history of considering our profession in the midst of these changes. So today, I'm going to talk both about the possibilities for generative AI and the ways in which it has created uncertain times for our profession. I'll be coming back to that over and over again. I'm going to talk about 4 areas. First, I'm going to talk about math problem solving, then math tutoring and feedback, then adapting tasks to learner needs with Gen AI, and then finally teacher planning using Gen AI. Then I'll close by talking about where we go from here. Okay, so I gave you some stats about how good Gen AI performs on our various assessments. But one thing I think is striking is how much it has improved. So the blue bars are the predecessor of our contemporary LLM GPT-4 called GPT 3.5. You can see it scored much lower on all of these assessments than the most recent model. One of the reasons is the most recent model has computer vision. It can actually read mathematical diagrams that are on the AP Calculus exam or on the SAT. And it's just getting better. So the new GPT-01 Strawberry model scored an 83% on the Math Olympiad qualifier, which requires complex and creative reasoning. So these problem-solving capabilities of generative AI have created uncertain times for lots of reasons. So there was a study that looked at the associations that generative AI made with the word mathematics. Remember, Gen AI is trained from training data of how humans feel about mathematics on the internet. So imagine what it's learning. And it in fact found that 10% of the associations GPT made with mathematics were negative words, like frustrating, anxiety, fearful. Now you might think this would be true for any difficult academic subject, but it was not the case for example, physics. This seems to be something unique to mathematics. And however much of a problem this is in GPT-4, GPT 3.5 was far worse. GPT 3.5 hated math. 50% negative associations. Imagine all the people that use this software and had these kinds of sentiments come from this AI. Research has also shown that AI is very sensitive to inconsequential aspects of how you prompt it. This was actually a research study where somebody told the AI they were a starship captain, and it got significantly better at math when it thought it was a starship captain. And Gen AI, despite its relatively impressive performance on assessments, it does make math mistakes. And it's unclear what the implications of making these mistakes are, especially when K-12 students see it make mistakes. It's also been argued that AI systems are fundamentally incapable of understanding people's embodied interactions in the world in ways that humans understand them. And Gen AI requires a lot of computing power. This can have financial and environmental impacts that disproportionately harm marginalized groups. And finally, there's a lot of concern over using Gen AI for cheating on assignments. While both the detection of Gen AI use and disciplinary action may differentially negatively impact special education students, English language learners, neurodivergent students, and Black students. There's studies coming out about this constantly now. So the second area that I'm going to talk about is Gen AI for math tutoring and feedback. So Gen AI can take student responses and attempt to diagnose errors and give pedagogical feedback. So I gave GPT-4 an incorrect student solution to x squared plus 6x equals 27. I took the incorrect solution straight from the IES practice guide for algebra, and I asked it to diagnose the mistake. It did a good job breaking down each step in solving the problem. It located where the mistake was, it said what the mistake was, and then it said the correct way to solve the problem. So some of the research is indicating now that Gen AI explanations and feedback can sometimes actually be preferred over educator-generated feedback because they're more thorough, detailed, and step-by-step. Now, an educator might just have written, you forgot to include the negative root as the feedback, whereas with Gen AI, we get this gigantic step-by-step explanation. But what are the implications of this for learning? Research is just starting to emerge on the effect of having generative AI tutor students on its own. This recent RCT by Bastani et al. Looked at 1,000 high school students. For 15% of their math curriculum for one semester, they used generative AI for assisted practice. There were 3 conditions in the study. One condition used ChatGPT. The second one used ChatGPT, but it was enhanced with solutions to their practice problems, as well as teacher feedback related to those solutions. And it also had instructions not to just give students the answers. And the final condition was a control condition, and it was a strong control, no devices at all in this condition. They looked at both their performance on the practice problem, where they had access to the resources, and their performance on a later exam. And what they found is that, not surprisingly, the chatbot tutors improved performance on the practice problems where it was being used compared to the control condition. But on the exam, ChatGPT was significantly harmful to students' performance. And the enhanced version of ChatGPT, there was no difference in students' performance. There was a slight negative trend for the enhanced version. So what the authors concluded is that GPT-4 alone was being used as a crutch. Students would ask it for the answer without much interaction or substance. And this lines up with other research that has suggested that using chatbots for tutoring can be associated with lower student confidence afterwards and no associated performance boost. Despite the lack of research on AI chatbots, the market for them is very quickly growing. The most popular one is Khan Academy's Khanmigo, which is a pay chatbot. You can see here, Khan Academy's Khanmigo can solve any math problem you want with it. Here I had it give me the problem 3x plus 2 when x equals 5. And one interesting thing about Khanmigo is that it remembers students' interests and can put any problem in the context of their interests. So I had told it I was interested in nursing, and you can see when asked, Khanmigo was able to change the problem and make it a problem about nursing. You can see Khanmigo has this little disclaimer up there that it does make math mistakes, kind of in small font. And just 1 year after launch, there were 65,000 students using it. They're expecting to expand to 500,000 to 1 million students for fall 2024. A lot of districts are using this as their approach to tutoring and licensing with Khanmigo. And Khanmigo, the reason it's so ahead of the game is that it came out very shortly after the release of ChatGPT. ChatGPT was released in November 2022, Khanmigo in March 2023. A lot of the competitors were kind of trying to figure out how to do this ethically, but Khanmigo went really quickly through that process. So Dan Mayer wrote a blog titled Khanmigo Wants to Love Kids But Doesn't Know How. And this argued that these kinds of Gen AI tutors see mathematics as a numbered list of steps that a machine can execute one at a time. They see students as buggy computers whose errors should be identified and corrected. And the lie that Khanmigo perpetuates is that math is about a huge number of small ideas. And this same critique could honestly be made about a lot of our digital learning platforms for math that don't use AI. But the rise of generative AI is making this problem even more important. And LLMs are certainly not perfect as tutors. They still struggle to understand incorrect student answers and the errors that lead to them, and they struggle to anticipate likely incorrect student answers. There's a lot of research on this specifically. The third area that I'm going to talk about is using Gen AI to adapt tasks to learners' needs. So Gen AI can be used to modify the readability of math tasks in curricula. Carnegie Learning has been doing a lot of work on this, and they found that Gen AI can, pretty similar to a human, successfully rewrite problems to enhance their readability, and this can improve mastery, especially for struggling readers. Gen AI could also be used in the future to generate diagrams that help learners visualize math problems. This is something my lab is really interested in. Imagine if for any mathematical task, you could click a Generate Diagram button, and it would give you a mathematically accurate and artistic rendering of what is going on in that problem instantly through Gen AI. Gen AI can also be used to adapt problems to learners' interests, like I showed in Conmigo. So we conducted a study of middle school girls using Gen AI to write personalized math problems for a video game they were pitching to a real video game company. And the girls found the math problems they could write with Gen AI to be fun and engaging. So let's listen to some of these girls right now talk about it.
And its effectiveness? AI can be used to make interesting, engaging problems very quickly. Like imagine you're a teacher, right? You're a math teacher. You're trying, and you already know your kids don't like math. No one wants to look at this boring problem on the board and solve it. So what you do, you go to chat. So what the teacher does, they go to chat GPT, they type in, okay, so here's this problem, now make it about wizards. Then boom, you got a problem about wizards that your kids are gonna love. And you did it in like less than 30 seconds. Come on, this is a win.
We've also been talking to teachers. I work with a lot of digital learning platforms that are interviewing teachers right now about their needs and wants for generative AI features. And many teachers that are interviewed show some enthusiasm about this use case for generative AI, using it to adapt to learners' interests. Here's two of those teachers talking about it.
I feel like this takes some strain away from the teachers because then instead of us having to, brainstorm different ideas of how to change the context of a problem, it's already there for us to expose our students to. So it'll be good.
There's so much fear, and especially this group that I have, they, are willing to talk about something they're comfortable with and they feel like they have some knowledge that they could share. It's really intimidating whenever they have no clue. I mean, especially if they're already struggling in math and then they don't even understand the content or the subject matter that they're asked to talk about.
This use of Gen AI to adapt to learners has also created uncertain times. There are well-documented biases in generative AI against marginalized groups and preference for privileged groups, due in part to the nature of the Gen AI training data. We've seen this in our work too. And it also was evident in the picture that it generated of this conference. But this is an issue with generating text outputs as well as images. The images are very dramatic, but there's bias in the text as well. There's also privacy and surveillance concerns whenever we're collecting things about students in order to adapt instruction to them. So my final area I'm going to talk about is Gen AI to support teacher planning. And this is an area of interest because only about half of teachers' time is in direct interaction with students. And there's a lot of interest right now in finding ways to make that other half of their time better and more efficient. So one of the most popular tools for teachers that uses generative AI is Magic School. And Magic School can do it all. It can help teachers respond to emails. It can create assessment questions. It can create tasks that are relevant to their learners' needs. It can unpack the standards from them. This is just a few of the tools. There are dozens of Gen AI tools here that teachers can use. And Magic School advertises itself as a way to fight teacher burnout using artificial intelligence. There's been a lot of research emerging on this more than any of the other areas in the math ed proper field. And there's been some promising results for using Gen AI to build mathematical and pedagogical knowledge for teachers, to simulate students, and to help teachers plan lessons. Generative AI can also classify teacher moves from rehearsal transcripts to give math teachers actionable feedback. Research shows that teachers often extensively modify Gen AI output to suit their needs and context, and that teachers are not yet fluent with prompting for follow-up requests from the Gen AI. They kind of get the output and either keep it or don't keep it. We did a study of math teachers using Magic School for lesson planning, and the teachers recognized some affordances. Here's a short video.
Oh, wow. Wow. Technologies. We're not going to need teachers anymore. Like, do you realize that this is our job? Like, oh my gosh. That's great.
So it just gave us a little mini lesson on it, and then we also use it for the standard unpacker as well.
Okay.
And it took me seconds to do it. And this is something that normally would take me a good hour.
So these tools have also created uncertain times. Research has shown that they can create developmentally inappropriate content, like a scenario about weight loss for middle school students. They also have difficulty in adapting tasks meaningfully to different kinds of learners or different learner interests. They can do it on a surface level. So here are some of my teachers talking about adapting to emerging bilinguals.
For the making development, we did a student who was ESL from another country. It really didn't change anything. Like, now that I look at it, the words are pretty complex. I'm ESL, and I feel like these are not adapted to ESL and thank you.
And the teachers note similar things when trying to use it to adapt to students' interests. Here are some teachers talking about using it to adapt their problems to be about their students' interest in Taylor Swift.
But it was about laptops and keyboards. So we will be make it relatable to Taylor Swift. Yeah. Make it relatable to buggies. And it would just be, Taylor Swift wants to buy laptops. No, that's not what you want.
Okay, so I've talked about 4 different areas of research in generative AI. So I'm going to close by talking about where we go from here. And I'll start with the observation that Gen AI has not had a transformative effect on mathematics education so far. And there's probably various reasons why this has happened. If you ask teachers why they're not using generative AI, the #1 response is, I have other priorities that are more important. And I think this is a really telling result. I work with a lot of these digital learning platforms that are interviewing teachers right now about their needs for generative AI so that they can create products that teachers will like and use. And normally the teachers are pretty polite about it. They'll kind of go along and give their feedback. But every once in a while, one of them will kind of break the script and tell us what they really think of us focusing on generative AI in the midst of everything they're facing. So here is one of those teachers, an Algebra 1 teacher.
Yeah, do you think having a feature that sort of customized the context to something they had knowledge of would address that issue?
It could help, anything is better than nothing, but that's not the issue. The issue is the gaps of what they do and what they don't know based on where they are. Because teachers have a problem, and this is a teacher concern. We're trying to fill gaps. Like the city does potholes. You know what I mean? If you ever seen the cities do potholes, man, they just put something over it. But if the car hit that hole, maybe 20, 30 minutes later, the pothole will be right back there next month.
Yeah.
Instead of tearing up the street and starting over.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that's kind of what we're trying to do.
And then here's a video of a 6th grade mathematics teacher. We were talking about Magic School to make tasks relevant, and it went a little off task.
It's so hard, I feel like, coming in, the teaching philosophy was, I'm going to make sure my kids are well-rounded and they're critical thinkers, but now since the district is why are your test scores so bad? Why are your test scores so bad? Why are your test scores so bad? It's okay, my curriculum is going to be test questions, basically.
Yeah.
So them.
Yeah.
Mathematics teachers have real problems, and they're problems that they know AI is not going to be able to solve. Advances in generative AI and the influx of funding and work around it can actually serve as a distraction from these real problems teachers face. This has led people to ask, is Gen AI a solution in search of a problem? Many current Gen AI applications in our field only apply well to repetitive skill practice where students are individually at a screen. And millions of dollars are being spent to make this one part of math instruction slightly more effective. In addition, Gen AI is being rapidly scaled, even though we are just beginning to understand its ethical issues and potential negative impacts on learners. So for my last 1 minute, some recommendations. Gen AI tutoring in under-resourced settings with diverse languages spoken is important. Its translation abilities have the potential to open up access. Partnering human math tutors with Gen AI supports can allow the tutors to better focus on math understanding. RCT about this just came out a few days ago. That was really promising. Gen AI could also help with some issues that marginalized learners face during traditional instruction, like readability issues. We can't ignore these kinds of effects. But longer term, partnering students with Gen AI to confront rich and complex tasks has promise. There's been research on partnering students with AI to confront math modeling tasks, telling math stories, constructing proofs, and the place-based noticing and wondering I talked about at the beginning. Gen AI may eventually become a strong lesson planning partner, but for the moment, it's reasonably good at building basic teacher knowledge and generating some possible student responses. And to close, the NCTM position statement on generative AI that came out in February, it hoped that generative AI could shift students' thinking from solving to a mix of solving and verifying to create positive pressure to create assignments and assessments that blend the fundamentals and creative thinking. And the teachers would be able to develop batteries of math problems tailored to students' lived experiences. This largely hasn't happened. The focus for Gen AI has been something else. And our community needs to create positive pressure for funders and curriculum developers to pursue these kinds of goals and address the real pressing problems teachers face, in addition to the skill practice-based Gen AI applications currently being emphasized. And there are many ethical issues and unintended consequences when implementing Gen AI, and we need to improve education on these issues at all levels. And I'd like to thank my funders, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and the National Science Foundation, and the QR code is to my paper. Thank you.
We have a few minutes for questions, so for anyone that would like to ask a question, we have a couple microphones here. I'll make my way over.
This is actually not a question. Todd Edwards, my colleague, and I are talking about, it's really Todd, is talking about prospective elementary school teachers using generative AI as a partner for making lesson plans on Saturday morning. Todd's really, really good on this stuff. I will be a fairly useless secondary actor in that talk, but you should come for Todd if you're interested in this kind of thing.
I did threaten to serenade someone earlier, so it's a good time for questions. Yeah, raise those hands high.
Hi, how's it going? So I'm just curious, you said you did work with like teachers, like I'm guessing K-12. Did you do anything with like college instructors to see what their take on it was with like working with undergraduates?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. I haven't done any research with college teachers on generative AI. A lot of the conversation there seems to be around using it for like cheating purposes, rather than using it as a thought partner for complex problems. But I think we're going to get closer to that second use case once we kind of get over the shock of having this resource freely available to college students and widely used. You know, a lot of the research has been either with K-12 students or with K-12 teachers. There hasn't been as much attention at the college level to positive uses of generative AI, at least. There are, at the college level, some free Gen AI math tutors that are being used at relatively wide scales in community colleges and at major universities. So, you know, that's something that y'all could check out you could check out if you're interested in what's going on at the college level. These tutors, I think, are going to be scaled up. A lot of college students feel like, you know, they advertise themselves as this is the free and non-judgmental tutor you always wanted to help you with your college math work. So I think that's also going to be an important direction.
Yeah, and the only reason I ask is because like I teach a developmental math class, so my students use like the Alex math adaptive software, and like they just brought it up in the class one day. Like they said, oh, like I actually use Alex to check the responses from Alex, or I use ChatGPT to check the responses from Alex that I don't understand, and then they find that it's more useful there. So I actually had to like navigate that conversation, and at the time I was like, what do I say to this? You know, I was like, is this cheating? Should I like be okay with this? And I just told them that it's okay to use it as long as you're not just copying the answer, you're like actually using it to try to make sense of it. And I think a lot of them were on board with that.
Yeah, the research is very clear that looking at worked examples, which is what you could think of ChatGPT as, it works an example for you. Looking at worked examples of math problems is very beneficial to your learning. So it definitely can be used in effective ways.
Hi, so I am currently working as an instructor, and I find that as I'm revisiting the material that I'm about to teach, then that promotes in myself a kind of re-understanding and a learning of that material, right? And so even as an instructor, I'm learning more about the mathematics that I'm teaching. And so is there any application of generative AI at this moment that can promote learning on the teachers or instructors side?
Yeah, I mean, the study of using it as an assistant to trained math tutors was really interesting. The way it could support the tutors in better understanding the mathematics. They would ask their mathematics questions to it really quickly in the moment, as well as supporting them in their pedagogical strategies. There's also a lot of studies with pre-service teachers who are still learning mathematics, you know, as part of their programs, who are using generative AI to enhance their mathematical knowledge. So I think it's definitely, you know, it's less problematic too at that level when it's the teachers using it to enhance their own knowledge.
All right, thank you very much. We are going to transition to our next speaker. Thank you again for questions.
Well, first of all, I want to thank, is it okay? The micro, is it okay? Thank you. First of all, I want to thank the PME-NA 2024 organizers for inviting me to participate in this panel. Invitation that honors me. And I'm going to approach the panel topic emphasizing the role that outcomes from research in mathematics education have played in the design and development of technology learning environments. And since the panel topic is about technology and mathematics education, but also about artificial intelligence and mathematics education, I would like to start arguing that for making use of artificial intelligence in the teaching and learning of mathematics implies knowing how humans think about mathematics. But we know a lot because for more than 4 decades of research in mathematics education, we have been able to enter in the subject universe of thinking when they perform mathematical tasks, when they solve mathematical problems. This knowledge derived in this experience derived in well-founded body of knowledge. We know a lot. We know a lot because, let me see, because we know, for example, a lot about the challenges that students have to face when they engage, when they enroll in pattern and generalization activities. We know they have difficulties to identify the repeating piece in a pattern, and that the challenges that they have to face when they have to express the regularity in different codes, especially when they have to express symbolically, algebraically, those regularities. And we also a lot about the difficulties that students find when they are working with modeling activities. There are crucial moments at which students find real obstacles to understand the phenomenon that is being modeled, or to predict using the model to predict the behavior of the phenomenon in the long term. But all this knowledge has allowed us to identify certain tendencies, certain trends in students' thinking when they perform this sort of activities. In the meanwhile, the digital technologies have demonstrated their potential in the design and development of learning environments, of mathematical learning environments, helping students to overcome such difficulties. And in some of these developments, some projects have, all these developments, the technology learning environments have as common denominator the possibility of providing students with a visual and immediate feedback to their actions. We know very well that feature of the technology learning environment. But in some cases, the developers have incorporated an intelligent system as a compound of the integrated learning environment in order to use natural language as a vehicle of communication with the students. And this is the case of two environments. One is the microwave expressor developed in the UCL Knowledge Lab in the University of London, in the UK. The other one is the Intelligent Dialogues environment developed in the research center where I work, in the collaboration with the Institute of Mathematics of the National University in Mexico City. And in these two environments have this feature. They use natural language to provide feedback to the students' actions when they work in the environment. In the expressor environment, students are asked to reproduce a model, reproduce a pattern, a given pattern, using tiles and producing building blocks to reproduce the model. And they have to express, to perceive the generality and to express the generality of the pattern in different codes. And using the intelligent support, students receive feedback to check if they are doing well with these generalization activities. But the feedback is provided through incorporating prompts when students are facing some difficulties in performing these tasks. In the intelligent dialogues environment, it is possible to display simultaneously two windows, the microworld window and the chat window. They are dynamically linked, and the student can work in the microworld window and enter at the same time in conversation with the intelligence system in the chat window. In the design of the feedback in these systems, we took advantage of what we already knew about the students' difficulties they have to face when they are performing, when they are working in these environments with this sort of tasks. So, one of the tendencies that we detected in one of our studies with modeling activities was that the students have, the vast majority of tertiary education students have difficulties in the prediction tasks. To predict the behavior of a phenomenon in the long term represents a very, very difficult question for the vast majority of the students. So, using that knowledge, we incorporated in the interventions in the microworld window to face students with different graphs representing different predictions. So this provoked an interesting conversation, depending on their choice, an interesting conversation between the student and the intelligence system. But we cannot ignore that we are now entering into a new era of technology. And speaking of the generative AIs, we can imagine ways of enriching or enhancing these sort of environments using the generative AIs, maybe making more efficient, I don't know, even the feedback here, or incorporated natural language, not only with written text or whatever. Nevertheless, we can also imagine to use the generative AIs in another way, building or creating a system to help students to develop certain specific skills, mathematical abilities, such as the algebra structure sense. Algebra structure sense. What is algebra structure sense? Algebra structure sense is the capability of being aware of the internal order of algebraic objects, such as expressions, symbols, equations. And Maureen Hawk and Tommy Dreyfus, they formulated an operational definition of algebraic structure sense. And they say that a person, well, this definition says that a person has structure sense if he or she sees an algebraic expression or sentence as an entity, recognizes an algebraic expression as a previously met structure divides an entity into substructures, recognizes connections between structures, and recognizes which manipulation it is possible to perform, and recognize which manipulation it is useful to perform. And to verify if tertiary education students make use of structural sense, Hawk and Dreyfus design questionnaires like this to check that, to verify if these students make use of either structural sense. And if you can see the items of this, if you have structural sense, you can give immediately the answer without making any algebraic transformation, because you can identify the compound terms that are identical and they can cancel each other out. And so you can give immediately the answer in all these items without performing, just using your structure sense. As a result of their studies using this sort of questionnaires, they found two types of answers. One was consisted in trying to perform all the operations present in the equations, removing brackets, or trying to find the common denominator in the rational expressions. And the students that gave this sort of answers just performed a chain of algebraic transformations that didn't lead them to the correct answer. Whereas the other type of answers, the other type of approach was using structural sense. And these students identified the compound terms and deal with them as entities, so could recognize that they could cancel each other out and give immediately the correct answer. Well, going back to the question, the new AI tools, the generative AIs could help us to imagine or to design environments in which students can be helped to develop or to improve their structure sense. And as an exploration in the context of PhD project in the research center where I work, the PhD student tested a number of GPTs or these chats, these generative AIs, to check if they can use structural sense to solve this sort of equations. This was and the student used the Hawk and Dreyfus's questionnaires, items, to do this exploration. This is how the OpenAI, the OpenAI GPT 3.5 Turbo how it performs trying to answer or to solve this item from that question. The instruction was, tell me the next step to solve the equation. And this is the question, and you can see the equation is exactly the first item of the questionnaire. Next, and the answer was, next step to solve the equation is to combine like terms. And in 4 steps, she says, well, then this simplifies to those expressions, and then therefore there is no solution to the equation. But what the other GPT or AI how performed in the same task. This is the Google Gemini or Gemini 3.5. Tell me, it's exactly the same question, and the AI answers. The next step is to, I have to, why don't I can, because I would like to read exactly, is to simplify the equation in noticing that these 2 terms are identical and they can cancel each other. So, in just 1 step arrives at the correct answer. So what we see here, that we have exactly or very similar types of answers to the same items, but now it is not tertiary education students, it is the new GPTs, the new generative AIs. I wanted to bring these 2 examples because some colleagues have their reserves about how these new tools perform in mathematics. And this experience make evidence or provides evidence that they need some help to perform well. But the overall plan in this PhD project is to really take advantage of these tools in order to create assistance that helps students to develop their algebra structure sense. But we are still exploring that. But going back to the interaction of research outcomes in mathematics education and the use of these new tools, just let me say that I think that to take advantage of the power of these new tools, we always need to resort to what we already know about how humans think in mathematics. But this example shows that we also need to know how these new intelligent tools think about mathematics in order to take advantage of their powerful features. And just to finalize my intervention, I have some final thoughts. Matching research-based science with the accelerated advance of digital technology and AI tools represents an enormous challenge. Nowadays, we have very different scenario as compared to what existed in the 90s, when we started to incorporate the use of technology in the teaching and learning of mathematics. Widespread access to an expeditious use of the new generative AI tools favors a greater diversity of spontaneous uses in and out of school, and major changes are being to be hypothesized in the ways of teaching and learning and in the manners of conducting educational research in general and in mathematics education in particular. And these are my references. And the details of the examples that I presented today can be found in my paper. Thank you very much.
All right, so who would like to ask the first question? Raise your hand high, because sometimes if you raise it like our students do, we can't always see it. Thank you.
Hi, Teresa.
Find that some of these AIs actually perform as if they had structure sense. So we can say that maybe they are not very reliable performing in mathematics, they themselves. But we can say that in some cases we can make use of these tools in order to create assistants that accompany students in developing this sort of mathematical skills, very special mathematical skills. This is not understanding concepts. This is not solving problems. This is at another level, in another world of mathematical thinking. It's perceive structures. Be aware that the mathematical objects have structures, and we can take advantage of using that, being aware of that internal objects, the internal order of the mathematical objects can help us to develop very special skills, mathematical skills. So, since we have these new tools, the question is, can we use them to do this? And that's the answer. We are exploring, but we are confident that we will build assistants, help students to develop this sort of abilities, perhaps designing an instructions sheet, for example, to indicate the AI to how to provide feedback to the students when they are engaged in this sort of activities.
Thank you very much, Teresa. In the interest of time, we're going to transition to our last speaker. If you have questions, I will ask for you to hold until the end for Teresa's presentation, and we will go ahead and transition. Thank you very much.
Good to go?
Hello. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Philippe Richard, and I present this exposure about, we know although large language models draw on extensive knowledge, they are not structured for authentic mathematical works or autonomous reasoning. This presentation explores how these limitations affect their capacity for genuine mathematics learning and responsive knowledge production. While approaches like hybridization or technological counterpoint offer promise, they may not fully bridge these inherent gaps. I would want to structure the presentation in 5 parts, and the first one is our focus, traditional and new mathematical work. Mathematical work refers to the activities, processes, and approaches involved in the practice of mathematics, whether by students, teachers, or professionals in the field. The new mathematical work characteristics are emerging interaction between humans and digital tools, encompasses activities transformed by automation, dynamic visualization, and interactive feedback. We have a reference book that underlies this presentation. This one highlights the contribution of artificial intelligence for mathematics education, provides concrete ideas support by mathematical work obtained through dynamic international collaboration, and discusses the development of new mathematics in the contemporary world. We have another underlying reference paper in French this time. The translation is Artificial Intelligence and the Didactics of Mathematics, Current Situation and Issues. Well, from my colleague Nicolas Balachef from Grenoble, it would have been good to have a precise and clear definition of artificial intelligence unanimously accepted. Unfortunately, it is not the case today, as it was not the case formerly. The common criterion, AI is properly of machine exhibiting certain behaviors which strikes as intelligent, remind us that this is a judgment underpinned by a need of human empathy. Looking closer, it appears that such a judgment assesses both the task which has been achieved by the machine and the way it has been achieved. The behavior is striking because the task is acknowledged complex, or the way in which it has been achieved looks smart. Well, we are talking about a machine story, a modeled extension of the human, or maybe the third one, a human-machine collaboration, in the sense of partner or adversary. The classic point of view about artificial intelligence research, we have two subsets without any intersection, the symbolic approach and the statistical approach. And in the statistical approach, you have other subsets, but the first question is, numerical approach belong or not belong to artificial intelligence research? And the second one, we talk about the large language models, but these models are a very small subset into the statistical approach. When starting with these ideas, we want to talk about the human hybridization, that is to say, the human with the AI, and I have teacher training experience about what happens when you are intent to use both approaches. And the idea is mathematical exploration when we have to say abstraction, harmonies, and visual art. For example, the first exercise is to use ChatGPT and GeoGebra with interactive geometry and automated reasoning tools to answer this question if need. The question is, when observing Theo van Dosenberg arithmetic composition, the image what I presented before, an abstract painting created in 2130 during the neoplasticist period, visible regularities are noticeable. Black, white, and gray squares are arranged with varying dimension and intervals, evoking a sense of recursion. Our aim is to understand and explain the mathematical aspect that visually emerge in the thought world before delving into the artist's motivation behind choosing these abstract harmonies. Well, this questionnaire was passed to in teacher training in my class and in class in Spain, and we have some kind of question to prepare the second part. exercise 2. While exercise 1 is more qualitative, exercise 2 focuses on quantitative aspect. The problem situation is, it's easy to imagine that creating such a balanced work as arithmetic composition requires a series of des essais préliminaires. A sketch down on graph paper and measuring 12 centimeters per side has been preserved. True, we do not if it was a draft or a communication tool once the work was completed. To refine our understanding of the work through a mathematical lens, we aim to integrate some consideration from the guide used by Theo van der Berg. This would not only help reconstruct the figure, but also grasp the subtotal harmonic logic hidden within the work. Well, at this moment, the questionnaire is quite different because I don't want only to have answer about qualitative aspect, but precise mathematics answer using precisely the grid. What is the motivation in the background? I present two situation problems, exercise 1 and exercise 2. Well, I think that you understand. The second exercise is to put in evidence the symbolic approach, and the first one to benefit of the statistical approach. Well, the idea of hybridization is first human. It's when the human is in collaboration with the AI, the system. And the second one, it's when we want to use together symbolic and statistical approach, because each approach has des avantages et des inconvénients, advantages and disadvantages, I suppose. Well, we know, for example, a problem. When you sell newspapers in French, the first one was published in French in February this year, and why do AI have so much trouble with mathematics? And another in Quebec, Le Devoir, mathematics resists artificial intelligence. What happened? What happened? Well, ChatGPT deceives us. We can see fastly ChatGPT and its limitation in mathematics reasoning. For example, this problem is only to prove that a quadrilateral with 3 right angles, it's a rectangle. It's easy, no? Well, we can see with ChatGPT how is the answer. The answer with 4 steps, and the answer seems, well, not too bad. And if you do a second time the same question, the result is different. It's nice, but it's like a student saying everything they know on an exam just to score points. What happened? I request after this 3 different solutions, and ChatGPT return using vector and angle, a second user geometric transformation, and the third one using property of parallelograms. Impressive, no? What happened exactly? Well, the question, when the question is how ChatGPT reasons in math problem, reasons in 2 brackets, well, generate solution based on pattern and knowledge from training on text data, combines mathematical rules and example at its learned, does not rely on symbolic engine like Wolfram Alpha or verification of calculation. Not exact calculation of real-time validation. ChatGPT does not verify each step as symbolic tool word. Potential error in complex calculations and advanced logic. Produce plausible but unverified solution. Responses and approximations with logical coherence. Errors can occur, especially in complex of ambiguous case. Well, ChatGPT deductive reasoning is closer in reality to inductive inference. It's not the same. Use patterns recognition to generate relevant but unverified responses. Tools like Wolfram Alpha, Jere Discovery, and other CAS offer form of mathematical validation. Wolfram Alpha combine CAS with numerical and statistical tools. GeoGebra Discovery, however, uniquely incorporate CAS with automated reasoning for symbolic AI, especially in geometry. Unlike these, ChatGPT alone offers neither validation nor mathematical stability. And the effect of contextual inference is done to help the continuity of conversation and not to help mathematics. There is an example of hybridization. We talk about the neurosymbolic approach when OpenAI and Wolfram Alpha are working together in the GPT module. This time, if I ask the same question to demonstrate that quadrilateral with 3 right angles, what is a rectangle, he offers a good solution at this time. In the second request, it's the same answer, but with a different formulation to do the same thing. There is not difference. And we understand that at this moment, Wolfram Alpha use symbolic approach to verify a solution. And if I request 3 different solutions with this GPT, he use the first one, the properties of parallelogram, the second one, the symmetry of the quadrilaterals, and the third one, proof by contradiction. Very nice. And when we are seeing the details, it's nice. Well, challenge and communication between systems, because when ChatGPT want to talk with Wolfram Alpha and return the answer, the processing of natural language involves uncertainty and possible misinterpretation, so user verification is essential. Effective response of the system, hybrid system, depend on the clarity of the question, interpretation by ChatGPT, obviously, verification method by the developers. There exists other inspiring example of technological hybridization. The first one was with alpha geometry. What alpha geometry do? It tend to resolve Olympiad's problem in geometry better than humans. And his technique was, the engine is like a symbolic engine, but he created before this a repository of 100 million properties. If you want to compare, in Euclid's elements contains around 565 propositions. And these create 100 million. Maybe some properties are not important or interesting, but he is able to produce this. And this engine try to use this repository, and in some, it's a good and interesting avenue to combine 2 kind of approaches. There is another example here, but it is not in mathematics. It's to translate language. Because at the beginning, in the 19th, for example, the system used expert system to make translation. And we know that it was very good. And after this, today, we use generative models to perform better than expert systems. But today, the reuse of expert system with generative model refine very well the translation. But when we think about the fact AI reason like a human, no, it's not possible. It's not the same. It's not the same. Another very inspiring example is from the intelligent tutorial system Trajectories made by my research equipe. But there is on standby because we have difficulty to have funds in Canada to develop these systems. But in the art of the system, we have the modeling of knowledge and reasoning, and we use the typical deductive step of reasoning to preserve precisely the mathematical character of mathematical work. And using the idea of two kinds of hybridization with human and into symbolic and statistical approaches, the idea in the art of Trajectories is to balancing interaction between natural and artificial intelligence with the tutor system. System have to understand that it are playing with human, and it's important to don't forget it. And into the system, we can use, for example, generative models in new form. For example, if we want to build a tutorial system to help really student and teacher in a paradigm of a geometrical approach with its own definition, properties, it differ from textbook and other. We can make, for example, the repository of every definition and properties belong to textbook and classroom. We have this information because my student make it. For example, the Excel table, it's all the properties and definition in geometry, in Quebec, obviously. And we can, for example, use a generative model to find the representative of each one, and when you have each one, you have down, you have the graph of solution of the same problem with 3 right angles from a deductive point of view. Well, if students are writing sentences exactly what you are using into his class, he can benefit of the symbolic engine from deductive reasoning, as occur, for example, in Euclid's elements. And after this, the system can reduce the number of possibilities with simple graphs to help it. And the difference is we can change the old style interface with the new possibility of using GPT as Wolfram Alpha do, with the help of ChatGPT in general. Statistical AI is very useful to help to manage tutor message. And the last one is, if there is a challenge with message, we have another with the problem. For example, when pupil or student are solving a problem and he is blocked during his processes, well, the system can find the reason. What is the reason for the blockage? And if the system have a good idea of this, it can return another problem, not a sub-problem, but a problem close to the first one. And if the student can solve the second one, or the third, or the fourth one, it helps to solve the first problems. That is to say, generative model can help to use connected problem to help students without say answer at the same time of the questions. To close, when we talk about the large language model, it's very easy to understand what specialists think about it. This extract of Kevin Buzard, large language models right now are likely a weak undergraduate who is unable to think for themselves, but who have done a lot of background reading. Well, my conclusion is, although these models rely on a relatively very vast knowledge base, it is not structured to perform mathematical work. Moreover, they lack in the autonomous reasoning capabilities and control essential for authentic and dialectical mathematical learning, as well as for the production of necessary knowledge that is only reactive to the subject questioning. Despite the potential advantage of hybridization, it may prove insufficient to overcome these interesting limitations. And I think that to do empirical studies is very important, because we don't have the real answer about what happened. And if we don't have any funds to develop it, we have a very big problem, because AI, it's not very good for do mathematical work. Thank you.
All right. So who would like to ask the first question? Scott's coming with the other microphone.
Thank you all. Your talks have been mostly about the way AI is used for addressing school math problems, or like Olympiad problems and things that are not real world problems so much. And I imagine that mathematicians, applied mathematicians, are using AI to solve or to address real world problems. And I wonder, is there any work in our field in math education about how that kind of application of AI is used in classrooms? Like, for example, I don't even know. I can't give an example because I can't imagine. But just a different kind of math problem.
If I understand well the question, we have to make the difference between a situation problem as a mathematical school problem and modeling problem. I know very well that it's not the same approach. Well, ChatGPT is useful to an exploration time. When we are starting without any knowledge about the problem, a real problem, maybe you can use ChatGPT to generate first kind of idea. But after this, you have to work seriously with mathematical models to understand exactly what happened, and maybe with symbolic approaches. For example, the Kevin Buzard, who I cite at the end of my presentation, he intend at the moment to use precisely symbolic approach to discover each of theorems in his college, I don't remember in London College. And he want precisely in his program to make the very symbolic structure of. Mathematicians use symbolic approaches. And if mathematicians use statistical approaches for his own work, it's maybe as communication tools or to avoid the syndrome de la page blanche, when you don't have any idea to start to solve anything. Because ChatGPT, for example, made a lot of pattern recognition, or and it's any human being can read a lot of works like this, huh? And to start, it's interesting, but it's not mathematical work.
Thank you for your talk, and really all three talks are so insightful and complementary. So perhaps people have views from all three speakers on this question. I guess the thing that I want to really reflect on is that in the last 30 years or something, one of the biggest insights I get from math ed research was the importance of being able to explain your reasoning. And when we start to coach kids to think about, like, how did you solve it, and, like, how could you explain it, right? And what's puzzling to me, and maybe you have insights about this, is if we ask these AI models to reflect on their reasoning, they don't have a path that they can reconstruct about how their answers came about. In fact, even the people who built those AI models couldn't tell us how those AI models arrived at those answers, because there's so much high dimensionality associations going on that no one knows how they work. So I want to ask about this point about the relevance of not just doing math, but explaining the math we do.
Well, I think that first, it's obvious that pupils or young children was born with AI. It's obvious, and our problem from the mathematical education point of view is we have to do something with this, because students go to our classes in K-12 or in training teacher classes, and he want to try it. It's the reason for why I made this experiences with the arithmetic composition of Van den Berg to understand better what happened exactly in the mind of my student about this. But after this, after this consideration of what we have to do with this kind of tools, we have to understand or to show to the pupils that the key is to create dialectical questioning with ChatGPT, for example, and the initiative of the questioning has to belong in the student, not to the machine, because the machine don't understand anything. Only the student can understand something if he can interpret the answer of the system, and if the answer is not very well, he can refine his own question to enter in a new dynamic kind of questioning. This kind of dialectic is made the idoneity process precisely to intend to find a conversion dialogue to have what we want to have to do with the ChatGPT. And if not, we have to change completely the strategy.
Thank you, Philippe, for those responses. And thank you all three of our plenary speakers tonight. Thank you very much for your insightful presentations. We also have papers that are from each of these speakers that are going to be in the proceedings. I encourage everyone to open those up once those are published online. So let's give a final round of applause for our speakers. I'm sure they'll be hanging out to answer any following questions. I'm sure there are plenty of other questions that can be asked, especially about this interesting concept of AI in our field. Now, I do want to remind everyone that immediately following this, we have some light hors d'oeuvres at the back, and then there is a cash bar out outside, especially for those of you that are still thinking about some of those uncertain times we found about this week. So please enjoy that, and thank you again, and welcome to Cleveland.
I wanted to announce also that breakfast will be tomorrow morning in this room. So everything will be starting again tomorrow at 7 to 8 is breakfast, and then the classes will start at 8:30.